Actually, Swordsman here. In this video I will look at a few more companies I've been recently adding to, and like always I'm just gonna go through the macro backdrop, if you will. My favorite trading sardine, which I use to gauge the sentiment in junior miners, Bear Creek Mining. Like I've shown 1,000 times before, we're at levels where basically, well, I think around 90+% of weak hands, aka retail, they've sold. And I mean, that's the main thing one needs to learn to be successful in this sector, I think, is that the flow of funds basically drives everything. When it goes up, more money entering the sector, everything goes up. When it goes down, it means that money is being drained from the sector. And you can obviously see this across the board. I mean, there's no way that 95% of junior mining companies trade in a relatively similar fashion, because the value of the assets they hold changes in the same way. I mean, there's simply no way. I mean, did Bear Creek Mining, for example, go from this valuation down to this valuation because of a change in value? No. Value changed obviously with the prices of metals because it's a mature project. But I mean, these gyration, that's just bullshit. That's just here more people want to buy, and then people want to sell, and then they want to buy and then sell. So I mean, the actual underlying value is almost an afterthought. And like I showed with Great Bear, which is a good example of a company that was recently acquired for 1.9 billion. Even a story like that, which just, they have multiple drill rigs, they kept on adding value, you still see 100 to 200% runs followed by 50% declines. And that could be over a time period where the value of the project itself might have gone up like, I don't know, 30%. But you still have these wild durations. And if there's one thing I've learned, is that sentiment explains 90% of the short-term movements, almost, it feels like. So with that in mind, I've just, that's why I use tools like this to realize that, okay, almost everybody has sold and have gotten out of the sector. So they've sold your favorite junior, they've sold your second favorite junior. Everyone's been selling. And then there's simply not too many people left to sell, because the people that are left are strong hands, and in comes the value buyers, dip buyers, or whatever. You see, for example, insider buying across the board in the sector, and who would know more about the value of the company, the value of the assets in a company, than the insiders? So that's obviously a sign that they think they can buy ownership in their own asset that they're working on for way less than it's worth. So that's a good sign, especially in a risky business like this, to see insider buying across the board. That's a big tell that everything is cheap, and they of course know much more about the sector overall. The fact that it is finite supply, more gold, for example, and pretty much every metal. We take up more metals from the ground than we find each year, so the demand supply picture is increasing. When it comes to gold and silver, obviously the reasons to own it are going up, because the world is, and the monetary policies are just getting crazier and crazier, and that goes with fiscal policies as well. And one thing to remember, that every single mine that is in operation today will run out of metals someday. So in 30 years, a lot of the big mines will need to be replaced. and there are simply not that many projects around right now. So I mean, the juniors, for example, they are a scarce commodity, and the commodity they have in the ground is getting scarcer by the day, because we again take up more than we find. Um, and my way is to front run the most obvious thing in the world, which is that commodities and natural resources are finite, and they're getting increasingly harder to find, and we're mining up the low hanging fruit each year. So I'm simply front running a time where every mine in operation today has died, and they need to uh, have added new supply. Otherwise, we won't have a mining business. If we don't have a mining business, civilization will grind to a halt. So I don't see that, happening, but I see prices of the commodities go up. So more projects, for example, will actually be economic, and that's of course on ties into optionality, which I'm not a big fan of actually. But anyway, so let's look at a few companies. Rokmaster Resources. It's been taken to the woodshed. I'm just gonna lay on Bear Creek Mining here. Okay, it withstood the peak in the junior sentiment over here. It actually peaked later, but then it got dragged down. So again, and you can see this here. I mean, they bottom around the same time, they top around the same time. Would you say that Rokmaster and Bear Creek Mining has a lot in common except for being in precious metals? No. Rokmaster has, been in a transformative phase, let's say, and it's very different today than it was back here. Today the flagship project is the Rebel Ridge project, and that's a pretty solid project actually in British Columbia, which as we know is a tier 1 jurisdiction, and recently Pretium Resources was bought by Newcrest Mining, and we've seen Newmont make acquisitions, etc. So it's a hotspot. Major miners are telling with their they're voting with their feet. They're saying we want and we can see having mining operations in British Columbia, Canada. So this is again a place where major miners want to have mines, and they're saying that yes, we think it's possible to have successful operations here, because obviously if you can have a deposit, but if it's impossible to put into production, actually the metals in the ground are worthless. So jurisdiction, etc., becomes a big thing, especially in the long term. I mean, in the short term, you can just look at Bear Creek Mining. I mean, it's been a trading sardine for decades. And we still don't know if this will ever become a mine. I mean, there are silver projects in Peru. All we know is that silver, along with a lot of other metals, are getting scarcer. So all else equal, I would think that the implied value of the project is actually going up, because it's harder to find metals, and we're not spending that much cash each year and trying to find metals. Anyway, Rokmaster from the top is down around 60%. And I would argue that the actual value creation curve has been something like this, because they have had a lot of real success. They have a district scale land package. There's a lot of 3 kilometers of underground workings. I mean, there's a lot of sunk costs here. I think the sunk cost is higher than the current market cap of this company, and they're up to a bit over 2.5 million ounces of high-grade gold and silver, mainly high-grade gold and silver. And the good thing about this system is it's pretty predictable. I mean, they've been drilling a lot. They've had good results. They've shown that the ore body continues, and it's quite homogeneous. So there actually, I mean, there are typically load gold projects, for example, or systems where you miss hit because it's so patchy and nuggety, and you have all these different lenses, and that goes for world-class mines as well. But this is a pretty thankful project because the mineralization is continuous, etc. And as you can see, I mean, the resource is covering these parts pretty much, and it's wide open all over the place. Or you can see here, indicated inferred resource. So there's, you could easily add on, double this, and it's wide open this direction, this direction, this direction, and I picked up some other projects as well. So you get a lot of bang for the buck, and believe me, there are not many 2.5 million ounce underground high grade projects around that are especially located in one of the absolutely hottest jurisdictions. So this is an extremely scarce commodity. This will, I think, it will have to become a mine because, again, there aren't that many advanced projects in tier 1 jurisdictions. So I think it's just stupid cheap. The obvious thing that's basically acting as a wet blanket is the fact that it's under option. They will need to raise, or they will need to pay, where is it? Somewhere at least. I mean, it's a decent price tag to actually get 100% ownership of the project. But in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing. I mean, on paper, this project is worth what, 400 or 500 million or something, probably more, and it could go well beyond that if they keep on having drill success. And if you looked at the insider filings, I mean, insiders who already own a lot of the company, they've been buying hand over fist. I joined them today, for example, by adding some. So I mean, at face value, this is one of the most undervalued stocks there are. I mean, I don't see any red flag at all. I only see really the fact that the market knows that there will be dilution because of the option payment, but that's over several years. But that doesn't stop the market, especially during a sentiment low, where almost everyone has gone out of the market already. People are looking for reasons to sell, not buy here. So every risk imaginable will be basically exaggerated, and people will look back and see, okay, yeah, my company. I mean, they'll look at Rokmaster and the value of the company is going down. No, the value of the company is not going down. It's just that there's more seller than buyers, and 95% of people don't beat an index. That's because 95%, use the herd mentality approach. Basically, the longer something has gone down and the cheaper it is, the less likely they are to buy it. Up here, everybody wants to buy. Everybody wants to buy here and here. Everybody wanted to buy here. Your grandma probably bought up here. The amount of people that can buy down here is very low. I mean, I recently, today for example, I've seen Elora Resources trade so far 409 shares. and that's one of the best looking tier 1 exploration projects out there. I mean, if that doesn't tell you that nobody is in this sector right now, nothing else will. So again, very limited amount of people have the fortitude and patience to buy down here when it's incredibly cheap, when you get a lot more shares for every dollar invested. I mean, this was down 60%, so you get like 3 times the amount of shares of Rokmaster by buying down here than up here. But nobody wants to buy, except insiders who know how cheap it is, obviously. This is, in my opinion, a no-brainer. This is going to be a mine one day, and on paper it's worth, I think, like 500 million. And you see here, I mean, there's a lot of exploration potential. But that's I mean, I've got 99 problems, and finding a cheap junior isn't one right now. I mean, I would be happy if I found one of these cases in any sector, something this cheap. But the quotation problem right now, excuse me, is that I see 50 or 60 juniors that are almost as cheap as Rokmaster. So I have way less money and dry powder than I have opportunities. I've never seen this amount of opportunities because I started buying in August of 2015. I started buying juniors around here. And at that point in time, gold was at 1100, silver was at $14 per share, per ounce. So back here it was kind of hard to buy because almost no precious metal project on earth made any money. So you were buying into a lousy business where the projects that the juniors had weren't even economic at those prices. So you were buying something that at face value was pretty much worthless, and they were priced like they were worthless. Right now gold is at 1820 or something. Silver is at, I have no idea, $23. I don't pay much attention to the metals. Let's say $23. Way better than here. The gold mining business is, putting out record cash flow basically. And the major miners are, record cashed up. But the juniors are trading like metal prices were, in the abyss, that the sector overall was crap, that the Rebel Ridge project was worthless. It is far from worthless on paper right now. I mean, back in 2015, maybe this would be worth on paper, let's say, 80 million. And now it's like 500 million. But the market cap of Rokmaster, I think, is around, 30 million, something like that. I mean, it's just it's insane. And I could do videos like this all day basically, because there are so many no-brainers out there. And that's the whole reason why I'm just buying. As soon as I get any cash, I'm buying juniors, and I'll be buying juniors even if the juniors stay down here for another year. I'll continue to buy. If they go down, I'll try to buy even more. And when sentiment gets to a high again, which I think will take Bear Creek Mining, for example, up around here, I think I could retire. I'm not 100% sure. And the thing is that that sentiment will change. It always does. It always goes from no buyers to a lot of buyers, to no buyers to a lot of buyers, to no buyers to a lot of buyers. And we're not even, I mean, the gold and silver bull aren't really, we're far away from a peak in those markets, in my opinion. So I mean, permanent perma-bull mode until the sector gets expensive, until I can't find a single junior that has a great risk-reward profile because they are so highly valued. Right now I have the exact opposite problem. I see bargains all over the place. I own shares of more companies than I've ever done before because, again, the opportunities are incredible right now in light of where the price of gold and silver is. Then we have Goliath Resources. I think it has become my second largest holding, actually, if I include the warrants. Remarkable project. Not long ago they released the last of the first ever drill campaign here. They had 100% hit rate. 100% hit rate. Every single hole here showed pretty much economic or probably economic mineralization, and that's from a 5.3 thousand meter drill program. And I've showed this before, but there's a study done by Kennerland where they go through the amount of drill meters in a maiden campaign and the quality of a discovery hole, let's say, and what that says would suggest about the strength of the system. I mean, if it takes you 50,000 meters to get 100 gram meter intercept, for example, that doesn't tell you that it's a remarkable or significant system probably, because it took so many, you know, kicks at the can to hit one zone, or I mean a slice of one zone that was actually very good. But they've hit really good intercepts. I don't remember the some from the first hole they hit, I think like 35 meters or something of 8 grams per ton. I'm not sure where that is, but that's an obscene drill result. So I mean, this is from a 5,000 meter, 5.3 thousand meter drill campaign. This is probably one of the absolutely best results in the junior sector over the last couple of years. And the most remarkable thing is that they hit on every hole. They hit on every hole. So I mean, it's, you know, relatively closely spaced here, but most deposit, and that goes for, like, you know, the really good. I mean, take Fosterville for example. That was just a, you know, a 50-meter wide channel or whatever. So I mean, it's way abnormal to have 100% hit rate, and especially given this was a, you know, completely wildcat blind hole down here, and that had multiple intercepts. So you gotta ask yourself, okay, if you're drilling, you know, semi-blind and you're hitting on in every hole, what does that tell you about the strength of the mineralization of the system? What does that tell you about the base case or balance of probabilities in terms of success for any other hole they would be drilling here? Because they have now a very ambitious drill campaign planned for this year. I hope I can find a good picture of all the. Okay, maybe this is the best one. So I think all the pink holes here are planned real holes, and they found extensions as well. I mean, beyond the actual shorebed zone down here or something, I think. And it's still wide open, and it has ballooned to 2.3 almost kilometers wide. And they have no idea how far it goes down. They have no idea. I mean, this might be mineralized, economically mineralized. This might be economically mineralized. These extensions might be mineralized as well. So it's like the shorebed zone alone could be a massive deposit, and so far it looks incredibly strong, simply due to the fact that it had 100% hit rate. So I mean, what do I expect from the, like, next let's say 30 holes or whatever? I expect a lot more hits. I expect them to have hit in a bunch of places here where we, you know, could have an inferred resource of, I don't know, 2 million ounce plus. I mean, who knows? I mean, I don't remember the calcs off the top of my head, but I can see the shorebed zone, you know, be a 2 to 5 million ounce high grade underground gold system. And again, that's a very, very rare commodity. If you're sitting on one of the few high grade underground deposits in British Columbia, which is like the also a limited supply in terms of being one of the best jurisdictions in the world, that's probably gonna become a mine one day. Yeah, I mean, I see no reason at all. I mean, to sell my large Goliath stake. I expect that within 2 years, I expect a lot of drill hits all around here. I expect an inferred resource of whatever, multi-million ounce. I expect the current valuation to look very cheap, and if I have to wait 2 years for let's say 200-300% return, I'm all for that. That's way above what I, you know, that's way above my expectations for my long-term compounding result, let's say. That would be a massive success, and again, one of them appears to be one of the most predictable systems around. No brainer from a geological perspective, absolutely no brainer. Fortunately in a tier 1 jurisdiction, fortunately underground as well, which helps with ESG, as we all know. And it could be, I don't know how big it could be. We have no idea where the limits are. We have no idea where the limits of the extensions are, etc. Again, top-notch, extremely rare commodity to see a system like this. Extremely. You don't find these every day, and I'm happy to actually own a partial interest in all of this. Line 1 metals, that's another like value hound. Has been one of the absolutely most boring stocks around from a share price performance, which has made a lot of people sell. And I mean, I've been snoozing myself. I can't argue with that. As with a lot of other juniors, it's not because the results have been bad. It's not because it's been a well, they had a slow pace due to COVID, and that goes for a lot of companies. And that's also, again, like I've probably mentioned before, what COVID has done to this sector is it has increased the time for assays by a lot. It has hampered work. It has hampered, I mean, a lot of companies want to see the results of what they're drilling, the assay results, before they decide what to do next. I mean, they want to know where does it look like the system they're chasing is getting stronger, or you know, where the gold mineralization, let's say, is tapering off. So that makes that the slow assay labs makes everything slower. The whole value creation pace has been you know, getting slower, and that's gonna, I mean, nothing, the important thing is that nothing has happened for the projects themselves. I mean, the geology doesn't change depending on how quickly you assay stuff. So I mean, the intrinsic value of and the quality of the projects themselves, that doesn't change, but people get bored. The pace of exploration typically has been slower than usual, and people actually, I mean, and that goes for me as well. It's like you forget that the companies are actually doing anything because you don't see any news releases about them doing much, because they're just waiting for assay results. So again, I think this is an opportunity for the patient, forward-looking investor to realize that yes, one day the restrictions will have been lifted, the pace will increase again, the assay labs will go back to normal, etc. And maybe that happens in 6 months. I have no idea. It's just that I see it as front running, because if we have a period of a boring period, and nothing changes sentiment as price. So you know that sentiment gets worse the more bored people are, and the more bored people are, they will sell, and that will, you know, impact sentiment in a negative way. So it's been a perfect storm for let's say undervaluation in the junior mining sector right now. Again, because if you look at the metals themselves, the value of the gold mining and silver mining business, it doesn't, the juniors don't reflect the value of the businesses at all. So you know it's sentiment at work. It's people leaving this sector and chasing, you know, crypto or NFTs or whatever, basically any other sector. And of course, like always before, these people will come in at some point. The ones that are selling down here will be back buying here. That's just how it is, because most people are momentum chasers. They are short-term traders. They dare to get in here because they look at what appears to be a never-ending rise higher. So they're expecting the moon by buying here when it's already gone to the stratosphere. So we want to buy when everything is extremely undervalued, and nobody wants to buy it, because if there's no buyer in the sector, that means that, I mean, the path of least resistance becomes up, because I mean, the people that are, quotation, dumb enough to sell, they're gonna run out of shares one day, and that just leaves buyers, basically. That there's nobody willing to sell shares even cheaper. So that makes the risks to the upside, and that's where I think we are. Going back to line 1, I mean they've I thought I had the okay, I thought I had the presentation. And anyway, line 1, as some people know, they own the entire Navilava caldera, which is an alkaline gold system, and there are absolute behemoths of alkaline gold systems in the world. Some, I mean, these assets, these projects are extremely rare. But if you find one, they tend to be extremely large. There are 40 million ounce deposit. There's a 7 million ounce plus deposit alkaline gold system not far away from Navilava. So again, in terms of gold and silver being a scarce resource because it's a commodity and nature doesn't create more gold and silver, and it's becoming harder and harder to find. One of the hardest things, one of the rarest assets you can be sitting on is a major alkaline gold system, and it looks like line 1 has one. So these are some of the most extremely rare assets in the entire world. Is it priced like they have one of those extremely rare alkaline gold systems that could host 10 plus million ounces? No, it doesn't. I mean, they have 50 million in cash. I think the market cap is 160 million. They have a fully permitted project. They're hitting high grades, and they've just explored 5% of the caldera. No, it's totally bonkers. It's totally bonkers. It's extremely undervalued. It's valued like there are a bunch of these alkaline gold systems around, and it's easy to find gold, and it's easy to permit a deposit. None of that is true. None of that is true. Extremely frustrating share price action, but this is going to get rectified, I think. It's going to revalue hard one day, simply because buyers will return. So, I mean, that's the whole thing. Now, the project value has been going like this, I think, well, maybe like this actually. But the share price has been going down. So that's an ever-expanding opportunity, and here it looks like there's, I mean, there are value buyers that basically, okay, this is so stupid cheap, it's silly. So every time it touches this line, they're buying by the looks of it. And there's still people, rotating out of the sector for whatever reason. They're like, yeah, okay, line 1 isn't going anywhere, so I'm selling. And then the next person that, held out for a bit longer, he gets bored enough that he's getting out of the sector, so he's selling. And that's just a cascade effect of let's say, people getting bored, frustrated, so they're selling, and their frustration and their selling leads others to sell out of frustration. But apparently it looks like there's one or more buyers that basically, this is the line in the sand, this is crazy, sell everything you can to me because I'm picking up one of the rarest types of gold projects in the world at ridiculous prices, so go ahead, sell to me. And I've been nibbling myself lately. Again, the problem is not finding no-brainer buys right now. It's actually finding money to buy them all. Excuse me. Novo Resources, well, the most frustrating stock from a share price perspective that I've been involved with. It's, this looks like death pretty much. And which is, I mean, this has been a, let's say, worse share price performance than this. But I remember this period in time. I mean, there was nobody interested in Novo at the time. And then all of a sudden it went up like 12x or something like that. And I'm very reluctant to sell things at a 52-week low. I mean, every time, even over this period here, if you bought every 52-week low, you would be up at least, I don't know, 50% within a few months, let's say. So I'm even, just at face value, even less inclined to sell down here. I've actually bought some today. The problem, obviously, with the share price, let's say, is that Beaton's Creek has underperformed, and if you underperform during a sector sentiment low, God help you, you your stock will be punished so freaking hard. It's, I mean, the shares of juniors that have increased, in value, that their projects have been getting better and better, are off some, 50%. What do you think happens to a junior where the flagship project has actually underperformed? Of course, it's going to get punished. Of course, it's going to get punished. The exact same news releases out here that have been released. If this was a good market environment, if instead of being down here, we were up here, Novo would not be trading down here, because Newfound Gold wouldn't be trading where it is, which is a lion or a major part of the valuation of Novo right now. And like we've seen, there was a raise from Elemental 3D. I think our shares right now are worth, like, I don't know, 15 to 20 million Canadian implied value. And if you add Newfound Gold, etc., and the other shares of other companies, I'm not sure what the actual market value of those securities in total are, but I'm guessing around 150 million at least. I think Novo trades at 290. So I think that more than 50 or around 50% of the market cap right now is made up of marketable or private securities in the case of Elementum 3D. And I think the Newfound Gold is going to go a lot higher than where it is. And I think at one point they were valued at around 180, 190 million Novo shares. So I think that's going to be revisited, especially when the sentiment gets back again. In that case, shares of Newfound Gold would make up, at this market cap, would make up, I don't know, let's say 70% of the entire market cap of Novo, or more than that. Obviously a pretty good ace in the sleeve, but that's not what Novo is really about, even though it's become a substantial value driver. I mean, the shares of Newfound Gold swings more than the profit loss, etc., of Beaton's Creek. Although with that said, the market is, like I say, during these periods, everyone is focusing on the risks. They're looking for reasons to sell, and they look at every declining stock price, for example, as more reason to sell, because they look so right on surface. I mean, if you have a bearish view on any junior and they go down, you're gonna, take Goliath, for example. I mean, the value of Goliath hasn't gone down 50%, even though price has gone down. I mean, they have a 100% success rate. It's ridiculously good results. But anyone that is bearish Goliath, for whatever reason, they will look like, yeah, I was right. It's actually, it's gone down. So I feel like I'm right, because the Mr. Market is suggesting that I'm right. So I mean, there's no better time to be a, almost every bear in the junior sector, regardless of what the company they're bearish on, they look very right now, because almost every share price has declined 50% or more. Not every. There are some stories actually that have a large following and have had pretty good momentum, etc. So there's a few stalwarts that actually are getting, fair value, let's say, by the market, because they have a large following, and the little capital that is in the sector is actually, buying it up. But on average, almost every junior stock is down a lot, regardless if they outperform expectations or underperformed expectations, basically. And again, in the case of Novo, everybody's looking at Beaton's Creek, and on one hand, it's understandable, because the worst thing you would want is to have an operating mine that is losing cash. I mean, that's because if you spend money on exploration, you're at the same time creating value. But if you're mining something at a loss, you're A, taking up metals, and B, at a loss. So that's like you destroy value and it costs you. So I can understand. I mean, I don't want to see Beaton's Creek underperform like this, obviously. But at the same time, no, it's not about Beaton's Creek per se. I mean, that was supposed to be the spark, let's say. I mean, the mill itself was supposed to be, or is supposed to be, the like a production hub, because they have possibly the largest land package of any junior around in Western Australia. And unfortunately, going back to COVID, we know that Australia and Western Australia has been some of the most strict, let's say, when it comes to restrictions and COVID policies, etc. And I've been reading a lot about labor shortages. So I think it's never been harder for mining companies to operate than right now. So there's a lot of, let's say, artificial reasons, I think, for an increase in cost structure and a rise in inefficiencies, etc. And like with the last news release, Nullagine Gold project production update. This wasn't a pretty sight. Lower than forecast gold production. Problems with technical issues with carbon regeneration kiln. I don't even know what that is. Investment portfolio approximately 146 million. That's superb. That's like 50% of the market cap. So with the decline in the price of Novo, and we're down to around 290 million, we know that with marketable securities, it makes up 50% of the entire market cap. But that's not something most people, if you look in the forum, nobody, especially in no bear, is talking about that. Because that's, I mean, you want to have people focus on the thing that you're focusing on, obviously. And again, since the price has declined, you're looking, kind of right now. And a lot of people that have been, bearish on Beaton's Creek, they look right. But that's also, I mean, one of those cases where you can, let's say, I can buy a stock for, let's say, wrong reasons, really, and it goes up, and I look right. But was my case good? That doesn't say much about the case, because I mean, Bear Creek Mining. If someone knew back here that Bear Creek Mining wouldn't be in production in 13 years later, was that a good buy or not? But that didn't stop it from going up. I don't know how much it went up here, like 1600%. And right now, of course, you look pretty stupid as a bull. But again, that's because this sentiment is atrocious, and the sentiment in Novo is atrocious. It's the same for line 1. I mean, the decline, regardless of what the company did, because they have had a lot of high-grade hits, people get fed up. And a lot of people are fed up with Novo, so they're looking for, I mean, they have no real good experience since 2017. Except if you were like, if you actually bought every bottom and sold every high, let's say. Otherwise, people's sentiment towards the company will have decreased, and people are projecting a never-ending downtrend, let's say. But on the flip side, which is the more interesting part, is that okay, what is it valued at right now? And what's going to happen in the future? We know what it's valued at. We know that marketable securities make up 50% of the market cap, and personally I think the newfound gold is going to revalue higher, especially with sentiment increasing, and I think they're going to be drilling a lot of high grade gold for years to come. So I think the newfound gold value that's attributable to Novo is going to go up, What I don't know is what will happen with Beatons Creek. So in a worst case scenario, Beatons Creek bleeds Novo dry, and they never, you don't get saved by the rising gold price. You don't get saved by the operation becoming more efficient, and not by finding more oxides that could be put into production, around the Nullagine camp. All of that. Okay, if worst case happens, yes, obviously, if you have debt, etc., you could go bankrupt. So that's always a factor that you should keep in mind. On the other hand, what if, just hypothetically, what if Novo right now, or Beatons Creek right now, is at its lowest point? That, okay, they rectify the kiln thing, the carbon thing, they get the infill drilling on point, etc. I'm not a miner, so I can't come up with everything, but obviously if you know the problems, it's easier to solve them than if you didn't know the problems. And I'm assuming that there are quite a few problems, and they are aware of what the problems are, and they're working each day to fix it. So in a theoretical scenario, this might be the low point of Beatons Creek. If that's the case, no is incredibly cheap, because in that case you get a mine that's, let's say, turns around by itself, or finding oxide gold deposits. Then you get all of this on top of that. So you have like 150 million in marketable securities, 146 million attributed to everything else, and Beatons Creek and a mill. So you're getting a lot for the 146 million. You get an operating mill and like 12,000 square kilometers of Western Australia Archean ground, and that's also a very finite resource, obviously. And they're doing ore sorting right now, and let's see here. Where's the? Yeah, okay. So, and they in the news releases said they spent like $6.2 million on exploration and ore sorting in Q4. That's obviously an investment that's going to decrease cash, but hopefully that's going to create a lot more than 6 million going forward. We don't know yet, obviously, but we've begun drilling Malmesbury. I don't think that's any success is priced in there at all, and that's supposedly one of the most phosphorus lookalikes there are, and again a very scarce commodity because there are not many phosphorus mines around. So that's an upside surprise potential. Ore sorting, obviously, oxide mill feed. I think they're drilling a lot. Ore sorting again. They're going to be testing hemite targets. They're going to be testing that nickel prospect between Artemis and Azure Minerals, or whatever it's called. So there's a bunch of stuff. If you take away the 150 million in marketable and private securities right now, for 146 million you're buying a lot of 12,000 square kilometers of ground with different exploration potentials. You have Egina, and I think a lot of these projects are put on hold due to mostly COVID related issues. I think it's very, I'm just guessing here, quite sensitive, especially when it comes to aboriginals and COVID. But you have all these projects, and there's a reason why they haven't let everything go, obviously. Because if this were to work, if sorting actually works, if they prove that to be efficient, this could be worth a lot one day. And if not, a lot of these conglomerates will be worthless, but they could still hit that hemi around here, the nickel potential here, and Malmesbury isn't part of this, but and the hard rock targets, etc. So again, it's quite an interesting time. I added some today, because again, it's like, well, first of all, I think we're at near sentiment bottom in miners, and if there's an okay shot of Novo, let's say, getting Bean's Creek under control and it doesn't sink the company, etc., this could end up being a remarkable buy, and hopefully you'll have a hit at Malmesbury nickel and ore sorting works and the conglomerates. They can work the conglomerates via ore sorting in the future to find some hard rock deposits for oxides to feed the Bean's Creek mill, and they can include sorting there. So none of the blue sky potential is gone, in my opinion. It depends a lot on ore sorting, obviously. So yeah, until then it's a wait and see, and there is still, I mean, there is a possibility of Beaton's Creek not turning around for whatever reason, geological, mining, permitting restriction with fresh rock, etc. But again, if that does not happen, I think Novo right now is incredibly cheap, based on all the potential you're buying for 146 million, including a functioning and permitted mill. But like always, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I'm sponsored by Rokmaster, Goliath, Line 1, and Novo. So make up your own mind, do your own due diligence, and again, it's like there are so many bargains around that you could have a very diversified portfolio, and I expect you to have, if you just held on to them, I think you'll have really good returns in a 12 to 24 month period. So there's really no need to go all in on one stock if the expected return on 60 juniors or whatever is like 200%. You could diversify across 60 companies and have 200% return on average, let's say. Some will obviously go down, but some might go up 400%, etc. Long rant. Thanks for listening, and if you want to stay up to date for when I put up another video, subscribe. Thanks.